I am here with Paul Reiman, who now has had the same background for a long time. How are you, Mr. Reiman?
I am doing
Oh, it's
well.
not?
It's
This is
not
it
gonna
for a long
change.
time?
It's not gonna change. I am settled. I like where
For
I am
those who don't watch,
positioned
I
in the
might have
room.
to like
This
swap
is
out I might have to like make some changes at some point in time. We're like many episodes in with
yeah.
no change here.
Yeah. And I am a bit Sheldon-like, right? As can be seen. And once you
That's
find a
the
spot,
spot.
like that's your spot. Like you don't move unless you have to.
So
So this is
we
my
today
spot.
have Tom Hayes joining us. How are you, Mr. Hayes?
I'm all right,
Oh, this is
thanks. Thanks for
great.
having me on.
Another EUPTD guru that we are bringing to you um, with a different perspective so that I don't screw up your background. Can you give us your background and where you're at today?
Yeah, sure. So, um, a long time ago, I was doing equal pay claims on behalf of dinner ladies around the country, and then um, over time, moved away from that. And when the UK brought in gender pay gap reporting, it was 2016, 17. I've sort of been heavily involved in that for most of the time since then, and we're getting on for now a decade of UK gender pay gap reporting. And then the EU comes up with the Pay Transparency Directive, so you know, right in my wheelhouse, as you guys like to say. Uh, Equal pay, uh, pay gap reporting, some statistics in there, a bit of law, all of the super interesting things. So I have jumped on that and have been, as well as the UK gender pay gap reporting stuff, been doing lots of pay transparency directive things for, well, the past few years now. It was 3 years ago nearly the
So
directive was
at Lewis
finalized.
Silkin, right?
Is
Yeah, yeah,
And
Lewis
for those
Silkin.
who weren't able to tell, he is not from the U.S. You're dialing in from the UK. Where in the UK?
Dialing in from London, though I'm originally from the north of London,
Right.
from the north of the UK.
and
Sorry.
and, and I am today years old to learn that wheelhouse is apparently is that an
Yeah,
American
like
phrase? Like the way you said that, like as you say, is
Well,
wheelhouse an American thing?
I think so. I don't think my mum and dad ever said it,
okay.
if that's the
Yeah.
measure.
I guess
If that's a good
neither did
standard,
mine,
that
so I don't
works.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. And Sean, like, shame on me for not sort of realizing this in advance. Like, so Tom, you're a lawyer. And I think we've said I try to
Wow.
stay away from lawyers. So like consider yourself special that we've allowed you on the pod. So I played in a
What?
band with lawyers and
Well,
I've
it's,
learned
it,
sort of
it,
my lesson, right? Like
well, I feel very privileged then to
Yeah.
be on the pod.
I this is being recorded, and I'm now married 30 years to a lawyer. So I will say how great
you
they
can't get away
are
from
while
lawyers,
we're
whereas I
recording.
can.
How amazing they can be. And then when we're done recording, I'll give you the truth. Yeah.
A real story. That's right.
Um, so we usually do a speed round first as we get going. And by the way, for those listening, this is a highlight
Cool.
for me. Tom highlighted that this is a back-to-back call, and just FYI, we Tom smiled. He was speaking to the Financial Times before us, which I'm boggled that you decided to still talk to us. Actually, um, like that is a large step down when you get.
Right. It
Yeah,
made sense that we came after. It's just the fact
yeah.
that we were
I was
just
expecting
after
the.
is
I
what's
don't know why
crazy.
I'm talking
So-
to you guys. After.
Well done with the warm up,
Oh, I like
actually.
that.
yeah.
So let's see. We have a speed round of question. It's like our human captcha. Are you a coffee or tea person?
Go for it. I drink quite a lot of coffee
Does
these
that
days,
make you? We
actually.
always the follow up for coffee. Are you a coffee snob or just consume a lot of coffee?
I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to be a snob
Okay.
or picky enough. So I don't
That
think
might
I'm a
mean
snob.
That there's a
that is
great
because now I
definition of
wanted.
snob there, right? Sort of knowledgeable and picky. One or the other doesn't make you a snob, but both of them I think is
That makes me
literally the
want to have
definition of a
quiz
coffee snob.
questions for someone who says they are now. How knowledgeable are you? The place you haven't been to in the world that you'd like to go visit.
Oh, a place I'd like to go to. I think probably somewhere like Argentina, Patagonia, all the wide open spaces, cold, wild animals. A bit like North Wales, but a bit more, but with
I
fiercer
was gonna say,
cats.
what we have bobcats. Like I'm like, we don't have pumas, but I'm like, that's my yard. I'm like, you would just like pick them out. I'm like, Tom's coming
Go hang
over.
out with Sean.
If you have a weekend away, though, we'll
Yeah,
tie
I
to
was
that
gonna
since
get
you said
that.
Patagonia. You have a weekend away. Would you rather go to a posh
Yeah.
resort or go camping?
Oh, can I split the difference and go to the countryside, but not in a tent?
Okay. See, just about the time.
He wants the
It doesn't
posh
have to be a
resort in the
posh
middle of
resort.
nowhere.
I just like to have some walls, but I would like to be
Okay.
in the countryside.
Yeah. See, this question, Paul, we keep thinking we're going to divert it, but it always ends up with a weird, like a different. We had a streak, Tom,
That's all
where
right,
people
though.
would just keep saying, don't care but the beach. And then we are like, do we need to change it? But you kind of went to like countryside or beach thing. So, but I like actually, I want the countryside with walls. Yeah.
But I need walls.
Yeah. Just somewhere, you can take your shoes off and they'll be
Okay.
dry by the next morning.
Simple comforts in life. Like, I don't want to have wet feet.
Yeah. Who wants a wet
So
foot?
speaking
That
of
was the
wet,
worst.
the place in the UK that you would recommend Americans go that isn't London.
Oh, Cornwall. Cornwall is the best bit of the UK. I'm sorry, rest of the UK. You're all great, but Cornwall is the best. It's like the English Mediterranean.
I've been there, and I can honestly say, like the south of England, actually, the surfing's better than people think down south. Everything else, but never did I think Mediterranean. But you're right; it's really pretty down there.
Oh,
Okay,
not
that's
in
why
terms of
I think you
temperature,
lost
for
me at
sure.
like I'm not like yeah.
I'm thinking of geology and
Okay.
cliffs and beaches. Not
I would
temperatures,
think Sean, with your sort of outdoorsy proclivities, you'd have been like a Lake District guy, or like
Here's what I'll
really
tell you
go up
about the
north
UK.
kind of guy.
People think it's London. I've made trips everywhere. Love the Lakes District. I mean, Wales, actually, out by Llanberis or Snowdonia, is one of my favorite places on the planet. I was down running the Southwest Coast Path the other year. You can get up it's actually phenomenal, more than people think when you get outside of London, almost in any direction. They're just amazing. It's different, and it's got a different feel than anywhere else in the US when you're out there. It's just it's super cool. So that's why, hence the question actually was like, there's so many cool places. What is a cool place?
Yeah, and North Wales
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
The rainforest.
Yeah. Three Peaks Challenge is always good.
Yeah, we did it as a
Oh.
firm some years back, 10, 12 years. Yeah, we
So
did the
it's
3 Peaks
Paul, it's
Challenge.
the tallest peak, tallest peak in Scotland, England, and Wales within 24 hours.
Got it.
So a lot of it has to do with your
geez.
driver, actually, to be depending.
Yeah.
We won't
Your
talk
ability
about
to get
the
to those
speed.
places.
So the slower you hike, the faster your driver has to be or run. Yeah. Yeah.
What was your
Yeah.
favorite of the peaks?
Snowdonia is I just think that place out there. I will say this, and maybe I'll post it at some point in time. One of my weirdest, creepiest trail running moments ever was in the park. So you cross over these roads, and I was out there kind of shoulder season alone, and I come across this road, and it's got a little pull out for people to go, and there was a van painted as the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo, just there. I've got a picture of it, and I'm like, wait, what? And so many people asked me, did you look inside? And I was like, oh no, no, I just ran. I'm like, but it just middle of nowhere, Scooby-Doo Mystery Machine hanging out in Wales.
It was probably empty, and the guys who have it were off somewhere ripping the mask off of some creepy dude.
Well, I wasn't going to tell who they were ripping the mask off of where. I actually just went back onto the trails for my own well-being.
That's probably the best.
Are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
I tend to buy crunchy peanut butter because it's nicer in a sandwich, and you can still stick it in smoothies and things. It still blends down.
That's a very practical answer.
That was the most lawyer answer you've ever gotten to a peanut butter question.
Well, what are your answers?
You made
Well,
an
you
argument. Like, you
defended your
didn't just saw
position.
crunchy, right?
That's what
Like,
it
you
was.
had a reason.
Most people are just like creamy. They're very well. Actually, I will say the fact that you're not an American and had an opinion, because a lot of times you're like, I
That's
don't eat
true.
a lot of peanut butter.
Right.
Well, I've listened to the previous podcast, and I know that it's
Okay,
a
good.
big
You did your
opinion you've
homework.
had. So I wanted to make sure I've got my position ready to defend it.
Right.
I'll send you my 17-page memo on the issue afterwards.
He prepared a peanut butter brief.
Oh my God.
Like, he
I would
researched it
love
and he
to
made an
have that
argument.
because
Like,
I
I
talk
love
about
it.
in comp all the time, which is why the question exists here and in a lot of presentations I do about peanut butter spreading. I would love to have a document so because I'm a creamy peanut butter though, that here's the other side.
You keep saying creamy. We don't call it creamy in this country. It's crunchy or smooth.
I'm good, just not crunchy.
I didn't realize that there was that.
So I need to maybe
translation.
going forward when we ask people out of the U.S., we'll have to say creamy or creamy smooth, or yeah, okay.
Crunchy or smooth.
Well, let's get to the good stuff,
Yeah.
actually. So I know you do a lot of work with the UK gender pay gap, EUPTD. Just to get things going, like we're a couple months out from the theoretical, um, finish line for the first pass. What's your view on where things are right now with the legislation? They're still coming out, where companies are. Like, take your pick on where you want to start with kind of the status, in your opinion, because you do come from it from more of a legislative bent than other guests that we've had. We've either had some software or some consulting side. You're definitely coming at it from probably a more practical standpoint, to be honest. Probably a more practical standpoint.
Well, I think we're at this point in time, we're reaching a moment where there's a lot happening, and there's a lot for employers to try and have to get their heads around. So within just the past week or so, there's been, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, maybe even different drafts floating around from different countries. And at the same time, you've had statements from those countries as to when it is that they're going to implement. And increasingly, it's looking like, well, then we're not going to implement in June. We're going to do it when we get to it, which might be in January of next year. And I think that point by itself is really interesting, because it was late last year, maybe October, November time, the EU Commission very strongly said, look, guys, there's going to be no delays. I don't care what you're saying in the Netherlands. There's not going to be any delays. Everyone's going to do it on time. But, countries have called the bluff of the Commission. And there are these delays that are happening now. Sweden has said, just I think within the past day or so, that theirs is going to be delayed. Ireland have suggested that it's going to be delayed. Even France, there's going to be a delay. It's looking like at the minute that those countries that do implement on time in June will be the minority. Not the majority.
So I guess 2 questions from that. Like, I don't remember exactly how many countries are still waiting on legislation, which those that haven't said they're pushing but haven't got legislation out, I'm kind of like, I don't think that's something's got to give. But I'm more curious from your statement, how much power influence do you see the EU Commission having? Because, even the standards that come out have kind of deviated from some of that a little bit. So I'm very, like, that's the first time it's come to my mind. Like, how much weight do they carry in all of this?
So, I mean, ultimately, the Commission can bring proceedings against member states who are not implementing directives or not implementing them properly. For the Commission to try and do that across what it's looking like most of the EU is probably not going to happen. I think we're maybe getting to a point where the Commission might be happy enough if most countries have implemented within, I don't know, within 12 months from now, we're in March now, and have done so broadly in line with what the directive is saying. I think there will be lots of countries who are implementing the directive, and maybe there might be 1 or 2 smaller issues that are maybe not quite so in line with the directive. And I'm thinking there of timelines for responding to things like the right to information. The directive says it needs to be done as soon as reasonably possible, subject to a maximum of 2 months. Some of the drafts that have been floating around have been saying, the drafts from different countries have been saying, well, you have 2 months to do it. That's a subtle difference, but it's a watering down of the directive where it's saying you have to do it as soon as reasonably possible, but a maximum of 2 months, whereas some of the drafts are saying you can do it within 2 months.
Yeah.
If you do it within 2 months,
Good
that's
enough.
fine. Whether you could have done it 2 months ago quickly and easily, don't matter.
Yeah. Just to step back briefly. So you're in the UK. A question that I get from people, it's like, well, wait a minute, UK is not in the EU. How are you seeing UK employers respond? Because I do think, you're not sitting here doing nothing, obviously, with UK employers. So I guess tell the story about how you see that happening. It's not required, or is it? Like, how would you describe how UK employers specifically are responding, given they're not an EU member state?
So it is not currently required. I think there might be some movement in that direction, which we can get on about in a bit. But what it is we see is that the companies that we're talking to are saying, well, we've got big headcount in all of these member states, and we've got it in the UK, and often, Switzerland might be included as well,
Sure.
another non-EU country. But certainly the big multinationals, they want to have a consistent approach as much as possible because it makes their life easier. It's easier for employees that move between different countries to be able to think about where to put them, how things are done. You don't have to have 27 different explanations as to why things are the way that they are. If you can have one harmonized as much as possible, do it. And so the UK often is a significant headcount for a lot of these countries. So to include them when they're doing, 10, 15 others, it just makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I would have answered or said as well. And I think that's part of, given that some countries are sort of pushing. I don't know if that means that people can really take their foot off the gas. I'm sure that might be an American phrase too, but because there are still some countries that have rules that are going into effect, right? Like, so you have to comply somewhere. Are you really going to say, well, Sweden hasn't done it, but so I'm going to wait to do this in Sweden, but I have to do it in Poland because I do know they're like, it just feels like that's harder for companies than just, it's the direction of travel. It might be 12
But it's not the
months.
case across the whole.
But I
My
have to go
question would be, is that a
somewhere.
case across the whole thing? Because I told you I'm going to get to it first, Tom.
Yeah.
But with Article 7 and right to information, I just wanted to say it first because I wanted to get there. Like, to me, that's one of them that's kind of like if the country's late, because that is a very local thing, and a local probably delivered locally from a local HRBP or, total rewards. Like, do you see that being split out amongst different pieces of it? Because I can kind of see the reporting piece, Tom, to your point, like I'm going to do this in one place, one software tool. Like at that point, everybody get on board. Like this is just so much easier to do at once and then, spit stuff out. Do you see that there being some differences by country on some of the aspects? And that's one in particular to me that I told you, Paul and I are super interested in this right to information.
So I think with things like the right to information, and also I would add into that the stuff around recruitment and providing pay ranges and bans on pay secrecy, and not asking people what they're currently getting paid. All of those things, I think they could all be wrapped up within a single EU-wide approach or process. So this is how the company does it. We're going to do pay ranges in the adverts everywhere, or our approach is going to be we're going to put the pay rate, we're going to provide the pay ranges before the interview, but not put it in the advert. I think it's more likely to try and have a consistent approach to those things across country, because what we're talking about as well can be quite admin heavy. So if you have come up with a good process that will streamline it, make it not such a hassle to try and deal with these things, and to do so in a way that you're happy with, and you're not giving away more information than you want to, and you've thought about all these things, do it once and do it properly rather than doing it
I
27
don't
different times.
disagree, and I think when I've
Yeah.
heard people say that, the one thing that I come back to is this kind of the right to information because, like, I don't think there's going to be maybe if you're a huge organization, you can centralize that. But I know you said it's easier to do if we do it all at once, but it's actually a lot easier to do it if I don't do it at all. And so, like, and so
Well,
that's my
Well,
thing. If the
until there's
legislation's a
legislation
year
in, I
out,
think,
because that's going to be, I think that's going to
yeah.
be a huge lift for. I'm prognosticating, which means it's probably not going to be. But like, I think that's going to be a huge lift for companies to provide this all the time thing.
I agree completely. I think the right to information is a challenge to try and get right. I think the legislation, the directive, it's not very clear as to what it is that you should be providing. Like, are we talking about the last calendar year of stuff, of
right.
information? Maybe,
Is it
I think
probably.
instantaneous? Is it whatever? Yeah, it's not clear
But
at
it's
all.
not even useful to people, though, right? Because if you're in November and you're making your request, do you really care what people got paid a year ago? You want to know how you get now compares to what other
Yeah.
people get now. And for companies to be able to provide something more live on with a refined scope. So the definition of pay is super broad in the PTD, covers pay, but basically everything else. Um, but maybe base pay plus bonus will give people, if that can be produced in a quick, live way, maybe that will give employees what they actually want. Is it in line with the directive? Maybe not, because you're not including as much within pay as you should be. But these are all things where there's still quite a lot of uncertainty, I think, as to what should be provided. The guidance that every member state should be preparing and giving out, I think will be really
Yeah.
crucial and important. But my fear is, based off of my experience of guidance coming from governments, is that it tends to be not very good or helpful and changed and refined a lot over the years.
Yeah.
I think it's an area where if I was a government, I'd be putting a lot of time and effort speaking to companies to try and get it right, because whenever the directive is being implemented on time or 6 months late or whenever, it's going to be really hard. There's going to be but u- unanswerable questions that companies will want at least to steer to, and it also means that you've got if you've got good guidance out there from the government, then all the companies are at least doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think, Sean, to your point about like Article 7 compliance might lag a little bit. Some of the other, so much of what you share is deeply dependent
Yeah.
on the definition of like work. And we're seeing a lot of variation in how that's landing by country. And there's like in my view, you don't want to do harm by going fast. And you can accidentally share more than you are even close to required to share, um, in a way that just makes it difficult. Once you've opened the box, you can't close it. So I could see that being, look, we just don't know what they want us to tell you yet. And as a
Well, can
result,
they
we're going to
decline
slow
it?
down. Whereas pay ranges, to your point, Tom, like every company knows the range for the job, right? So it's kind of easy to relatively easy to have a defined strategy for that, even if you don't know specifically what does Sweden want us to share. Like we kind of know what we're going to share,
Yeah,
and
and
it's
that's the
easy to
sort of
tweak.
thing where you could get going with it before any legislation comes in. Score yourself a few points for doing things voluntarily when you don't have to yet. I think
Yeah.
with the right to information, I can't see any companies voluntarily giving information over before there's legislation in place that says they have to, because it's just more trouble than it's worth. Wait
Yeah.
till it's
But I think there might
finalized.
be a middle ground in that place, Tom,
Yeah.
because as you're saying this, the thing that worries me about right to information isn't necessarily the information. Like to your point, like it'll be semi-defined, I can do it, whatever. It's the volume because that hasn't been done. And so like they're going to come in every time there's a new person in my cohort and request it so that I can figure out what everybody else makes. And so is there an opportunity now that you said that to maybe kind of be like, this is the thing, but we're going to set the cadence at quarterly. We're going to send a report. Now the burden gets a lot lighter. Hey, the government didn't specify, but we're specifying until we're told different. Like that's actually kind of interesting point you brought up around like using some guidance and kind of taking a little bit of control because of the anonymity. Like to your point, the legislation might be not great. So don't let the employees kind of, in this case, define the rules.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, there's no limit on the number of requests that you can make for information. So, I mean, in that extreme example of we've got a new joiner, I'm going to do my request. I'm going to
Yep.
figure out everyone's
For
pay
sure.
eventually. Give me time. I'll have my
Yeah.
200 pay requests. I'll figure all the information
think
out
about
from.
it.
Every
Everybody
day.
else
Just
does it. You
ask
got a
every day.
company of 100. Like, and, you know, the one thing Paul's heard me say this: we know the comp department's not going to get more money or headcount. Like that's just generally a guideline. And so, like, who's going to do this work? Where does it sit? And it's just more work on a group that has already a lot of work. And so, I kind of like, whether you meant to or
Yeah.
not, kind of the concept of like, if they're going to be ambiguous, you define that kind of rule and say, actually, we're going to give you right to information. We're just going to send it to you at the quarter. We're going to define pay as this. We're going to do whatever. And until there's some legal precedent out there that says you can come in every day and ask me and have a steady daily drip of the report, like, fine. Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I jump in and make a nerdy
Yes.
point on the right to information?
We're going to call it an
If you don't
attorney
mind
point,
nerding
but
out for a
yes.
moment.
Yeah.
So, let me give you some EU law. So directives have direct effect, which means that you as a as an em- as, so it means that they have. Oh, hang on, you might need to edit this bit. Sorry. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is that there'll be a difference once the deadline passes. There'll be a difference between what happens in the public sector versus what happens in the private sector, because directives are directly enforceable against emanations of the state. So public sector employers will still have to comply with the directive, even in the absence of any implementing legislation, because they're part of the state, because the emanation of the state is how it's called. But private sector employers don't have to. So there is a potential challenge that the public sector across all of the EU will have as a result of all of these delays. They might find themselves having to comply with legislation that's not even been implemented yet because of these quirks around EU rules and what's enforceable and what's not. Nerding out over.
Now that, yeah. So when I think about in the US, when things apply sort of to federal, it does tend to blend or bleed into the private sector in some form quickly, right? So, and this just might be a difference in sort of how US works, but, you know, directives can come out from our executive branch that affect the federal government and its contractors, essentially, is how it tends to roll out, which, and maybe I'm equating something here that I shouldn't, but that does tend to be a little bit of a forcing function because if it affects some of the workforce, if it affects some organizations, you know, it culturally changes things faster than the actual. Now, maybe it's too late for that in the EU because people have been talking about this forever. But I wonder, do you see that being even if a country drags its feet forever, does that mean that local employers or private employers like feel like they should do something, or is it not like that? And people will say, nope, that's for the state. That's not for me.
I think they might start feeling the heat on them more, but I think given that the amount of delay we're talking about is months, not years, I don't think it's likely to, have that much of a difference. I think it's mostly a quite discrete problem for the public sector across
I
the
think,
EU.
Paul, there'll be also kind of the court of the actual court, or Tom will go, and the court of public opinion, I think, will drive. So
Totally.
flipping that a little bit, Tom, with clients and people you've worked with, how are you seeing companies kind of deal with this? The timing, and where do you think they are as far as being in line with the directive and being ready to go?
So I would say that there's a good number who have been quite proactive, who have been looking at things like their grading and their leveling and reviewing it, seeing if it's up to scratch for for the PTD and doing so a year plus ago and doing the groundwork. There's probably also a good chunk though who, January has rolled around and they've realised that there's a massive bit of legislation coming and they are not quite prepared. And so, we've been doing much more work in this area since the start of the year. And I think that grading leveling point, it's all to do with the categorization. You've got to put your employee into categories of equal value. That's a big, hard problem to deal with. And that's often a good starting point because it flows into both the right to information, your favorite topic, Sean, and it flows into the pay gap reporting as well, because you have to calculate those gaps by category. So two of the big things, the categorization is critical too. So get that right, get that wrong, and that really affects what else is going to happen.
Yeah. So let me hit you on another sort of nerd right to information point. So let's say that we're there's three of us plus somebody who doesn't look like us in a job. So three males and one female.
Yeah.
If I ask for my right to information report, I'm going to know exactly what that female makes. If I take it literally of we are the only 4 people who are like that.
Yeah.
Which, I know, not being a lawyer, that's not an okay thing from a data privacy standpoint to share that much about what Sally, right? I shouldn't know that much about Sally. How do you see those intersecting, right? How are organizations thinking about the trade-offs between privacy and what's required and right to information on pay and what's required? Because maybe they're not in conflict, but they feel like they're in tension, with these requests.
I agree. So it's like the GDPR is saying, everything's secret. Don't tell anyone about anything. All this pay information, I'm keeping it locked in a cupboard. No one's ever going to find out. And then the Pay Transparency Directive is saying, open the cupboard, open the blinds. Let's have a look at everything. Everyone gather round. This is everyone's pay. So it does feel like philosophically there is a conflict between them. I think so. Practically, there isn't any legislation that we've seen yet that's saying you don't have to comply if the group sizes are too small because of data privacy reasons. I think in order for the information to actually be private, you need to probably, thinking mathematically, have a minimum number, and that number's probably around 4 or 5 of each gender in order to make it actually hidden. But if that was the case, then there might be lots of categories where individuals, can't actually get the right. They can't exercise their right. They can't find out the average pay because there's not enough people. So I've not seen any legislation so far that's imposing a minimum group size, though there has been chat around possibly that being the case. But back to your point about whether there's a conflict between it. So the GDPR says, and I'm holding my hands up, I'm not a data privacy expert, so this is with a bit of with that caveat, but you can't do stuff without a lawful basis behind why you're doing it, why you're processing your data, why you're doing what you're doing. The PTD is the lawful basis. So it's not saying that you can't do these things. The directive is saying you have to do this stuff. The PTD says you can't do stuff without a lawful basis for doing it, but the PTD gives you the lawful basis to doing it. I think, in theory, even in these very small groups, that right to information should trump the right to privacy. But I can very feasibly see people being unhappy about that.
Yeah. That feels like something that makes it to the courts. Like, I could be dead wrong about that, but like human preference is going to show up here and somebody's going to say, I don't want that for me. I value my privacy more than the right to information. I'm going to challenge that. And we'll see what happens. Like,
right?
But that
Because
just feels
like you said,
right
4 or 5 people, you get to 3, like 3 women and 1 leaves, like you can start to figure the math out, right? It won't take long. And so what is that end size to make that the thing? I think that is, and then it goes back to, I think, Tom, what you said about, this categorization. Do you end up with something when Italy had like the 4 giant buckets potentially? Like there's some weird, like, how's that gonna how are those two going to meet is very interesting. Like, do we go back to, we'll go old school and call them broadbands? Like, there's just some weird like stuff that could potentially go down. That's a really, really good point. And I'm actually glad, Tom, you said it much nicer than I do. Did I usually tell people the first step is get your shit together. Which, it's nice to hear you say like all this stuff is here, but like that is the hard foundational work to get this. And it has real
Yeah,
ramifications. In the past, I would argue it was kind of like, you get close enough and we'll take care of some exceptions and whatever. Like, we're not exactly sure what Paul is, but we'll figure that out later. Right. But now you have to be like, well, we got to put him somewhere. Like, he's going to have a right to information. We can't have a, n size of one. So I think that's super cool.
yeah. And also, though, I mean, it's not just about the fact that people have their right to information. You've got the employee representatives who have a powerful role under the PTD. So, however you're leveling people, whatever decisions you're making about where what you're putting in the pay bucket, the employee representatives can potentially give you a hard time about everything you're doing. So, it's it's transparency really in all aspects of it. It's not just about the transparency of pay to people, but how the pay is setting, how you're organizing everything. There's transparency over all of that too. And it's like everything that you're doing, it's an open book now. Everyone, all your employee representatives can have a look at everything, give you a
Isn't
hard
that the
time
cool
about
part
it.
too, though? Because I
So
think like the knee jerk reaction has always been, let's throw some shade on this, and this is a really
yeah,
bad thing, right? And if you're comp, you're like, I'm gonna have to do this work or whatever. I'll throw a little shine on it and be like, this is an opportunity for you to go to management and say, we need to have a well documented pay philosophy. This is our thing, and actually share what used to be a black box because we have to. Like, we actually have to have it in a way that we can communicate it. And so there's a
yeah,
huge opportunity actually for them to talk. I mean, it comes with work, but I think there's some opportunity here that when I've spoken to some comp teams, they're like, it would be nice to actually share that there's a method to our madness and that we didn't just throw a dart up and that's how we came up with a pay range.
yeah. I mean, within black boxes, that's where all of the equal pay risk
Right.
lies. These, uninformed, arbitrary pay decisions. That's risk. When you've got an approach and it's approach that everyone knows how you do things and you're sticking to that approach, then your risk of equal pay claims to just go right down. You've gone through all of the processes of saying, well, this is how we're deciding pay. These are the things we're taking into account. You look like this, you've got this much experience and whatever. So that's why you're at this point within the range and you're not at that point. It's just, just putting all of the information out there and, and being transparent as to how you're
So
doing
as we
stuff.
kind of get down here, if you had 1, 2, 3 points of like advice for people, like, you know, the few that have it already are there, fine. But like, what are the top, 1 or 2 things you would guide people to as they approach this?
Mm.
Well, first point is crucially about your categorization. So how you leveling your employees is what you're doing up to scratch for the directive and the local implementing legislation, which might start to differ a little bit. We had a draft from France recently that threw some extra ways in which you should be categorizing. So I think that's the main crucial bit. Then you've also got to start looking at everything that it is that you're paying. So what is pay and in the pay bucket, and what's the value attached to all of those? And make some, there might be groups of people who are getting mystery bonuses that had a reason a long time ago, but don't have a reason anymore. So start finding out about things like that, and then also finally, start to do some analysis of your 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 figures. What are your gaps? What are your gaps within the different categories? What? How big are they? Can you explain them? If you can explain them, then even if they're that even if they're high and can be explained with objective reasons, then you don't have a problem. The problem is when gaps are unexplained. So um, within gaps by category, there's a threshold of 5% that prompts potential action, joint pay assessment. If your gap is above 5% and can't be explained, but if you have a gap below 5%, if it still can't be explained, it doesn't mean you've got no risk. It's not a safe zone to have a 4% gap. If you've got a 4% unexplained gap and you have loads of employees and you multiply that out, that could still be hundreds of thousands of potential risk out there. So, start looking at your data and start making some sense about it.
Yeah, if I could draw a parallel, you mentioned when UK gender gap reporting came in 2017, I think, sounds right to me. I was in-house working at an employer that had UK employees, and in theory, I knew exactly how it was going to work and how I was going to explain it and how we were going to manage it. We learned a lot when we actually did the first draft of the numbers. And it's like, oh, I didn't think I'd have to explain that, right? Like there were just, mathematically it all made sense, but in practice, like what it then looked like and, oh, well, that's not what I was expecting. How am I going to, like, there's a reason for it. Like there was nothing bad there, but it was a good period of wallowing in the data to really kind of get comfortable with the math makes me do it this way. Why does this pattern occur then as a result? So smart people think they can do this quickly. There's some time. So I applaud the comment of like, start doing some work, look at some numbers to learn how to think about it and talk about it. Cause it's not as easy as it sounds. Oh, two groups, compare them, explain it. Like there's a lot of nuance
I took away
in here.
two things from that. One, I've never got a mystery bonus, so I'm feeling like I left out. That hurts. I actually,
it's because you walked away from the
true,
mystery van while you were running. Like that's where your mystery went.
I missed out. That's my own doing. Thanks, Paul. The other was really interesting. Like that's the first time I've heard someone just flat out come out and say what I think many people think. Like you're not safe because you're under 5%. 5% is not like you're off the hook. It's like, that's a reasonable kind of gap-ish, but you're not, it's not a complete clean slate if it's unexplainable under 5%, which is kind of, a really interesting and poignant point.
Yeah, and that issue actually, like a small difference in pay between groups of people doing equal value job, it's coming up in the UK in equal pay cases. There's been a number of big claims where you have groups of people, one mostly female compared against another group mostly male. The difference on a per person basis is not very big, but when you multiply that by 3,000, 3,500 people, and you go back 6 years, it adds up. That stuff adds up.
Yeah, totally.
And in the UK, you can only claim back for 6 years, but across the continent, it's unlimited in many places. So you can go, if someone's been there 30 years and has been 30 years underpaid, that's 30 years compensation.
Yeah. Let alone how does somebody even know what it is, right? Like 30 years is a long time, and those spreadsheets probably don't exist anymore. So, right?
Windows 95?
Yeah. That computer doesn't work.
Yeah, floppy disk drive. I'm saving that drive here so that when that happens, I'll be the guy that
you'll be the one.
Yeah,
you have a monopoly. You can charge a lot for that client to access that data because you're the one person with the floppy drive.
Oh, that's not true. Let me tell you a fact about airplanes. They still start airplanes using a series of like 30 floppy disks.
Dude, I'm flying in like a week. That's not cool.
It's the old airplane, Sean.
No one can hack that. You're the only one with the floppy disk drive.
This has been great. It's definitely a different perspective. A couple items that came up. I will say it's kind of cool to hear a lot of things we've talked about, that all the cool, all the legislation, all the other stuff, it always comes back to this stuff that is like getting your job architecture and stuff in place. The only unfortunate part about that is that's like my least favorite thing to do. So I'm still useless. Before we go, I ask everyone if we can, if you can automagically fix one thing in HR, and you've got a unique view, what would that be?
I'll just say something boring then. If everyone could just get their job levels all just nice and sorted, it'd just make life a lot easier, wouldn't it?
It's interesting that you say that, and then I'm like, but that, as much as we've talked about that stuff, this is the attorney, the lawyer, the legal counsel being like, get your levels in place. So it's definitely, even though it's like something we've heard, it's such a true story, and it from all angles, like it matters. So it's kind of, it's a cool point. This has been great.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you taking time out. I appreciate that you decided to still talk to us after FT. That was cool.
They were the warm-up guys. They
For
were the
those
warm.
listening, Tom Hayes, it's Heys, in case you somehow clicked on to listen and didn't look at the name. A wealth of information, as you know. He can pretty easy to find. Lewis Silken is the firm. Find him on LinkedIn. A lot of great information from him. So I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time.
Happy to come on. Let's do it
Yeah,
again
thanks.
sometime, guys.
Yeah. two podcasts with the lawyer is pushing it. Like one is privilege. Two
I'll
is
put my
like that's
statistical hat on then, and
Oh
we
my
can
God.
talk everything
Wow,
regression
now
and
you got me.
stuff.
Here
You
we go,
promised to not be a
Victor
lawyer,
Oaxaca
right?
versus log linear regression episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And
Now
for
you're
those
talking.
listening, when we do post that will replace your white noise at night for sleep, so you can get to bed.
That's right.
So
ASMR
appreciate it.
into one.
And thanks
I
everyone.
love
We
it.
will catch you all next time.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.